Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the last week of the poetry unit. Our focus this week is on revising and editing one of your poems that you've written. And we really want you to focus in on a poem that is about something that matters to you. And what you're going to do is you're going to start off by going back to that poem that you've chosen. And your first focus is on the message, on the meaning, on the topic. I'm really making sure that you have something to talk about in your poem. So what I'm going to do is walk you through. This is a poem that I wrote a couple days ago. I'm now coming back to it with fresh eyes. And I'm going to read it through and sort of see where I'm at with my message. So the poem's called The House. My house is really pretty. It has big bushes out front and a pink Jane magnolia. There's also a big fence all around the backyard and a hammock play set and shed with a lot of tools. I miss my dog. He died 2 days before Christmas when my son was an infant. My house is blue, black, and white. I sit on the porch in the summer with a glass of lemonade, sweet and satisfying. There are 3 bedrooms. My son's room has a Bruins jersey on the door. I sometimes worry about him because he doesn't like to take risks or try new things. It takes a lot of convincing, a lot. I want him to be tougher and be a risk taker. I don't want the world to swallow him up. I also have a daughter. I'm not worried about her taking care of herself. She is a maniac. She's very tough. She might be stronger than I am. I hope she learns to be gentle. Sometimes I worry she'll hurt her friends. My daughter loves all things glittery and pink and slamming her brother to the ground. So reading this out loud after having gone away from it, it's really clear to me that this needs some work with message. But I'm going to start off by walking myself through the checklist. And right away it says, does my poem make sense? The reader could say what it seems to be about. And I think the reader would say it's about a couple things. So going back to this, I can already say I need to make a big move, and this is the move I'm going to make. So even though this is scary, I think there's a problem here because this is all about the house, and I feel like the poem's not about the house. The poem's about my kids. That's really the heart of it. So I'm going to take that out, and I'm actually just going to put it down here, out of the way, so it's not distracting. And then what I'm going to do is continue through the checklist. Is it about something that matters to me? Yes, it's about my kids. Is it clear that it matters? That I'm not sure of. Where could you add more emotion to intensify your feelings? That's what I need to do. So I'm going to copy, and I'm going to put this right up top. This is my first job. Then I'm going to keep going through the checklist. Is it long enough to feel whole? Some sense of beginning, middle, and end. I don't know that I'm there yet. So I'm going to put this in just to continue to remind myself. I need to make sure it feels like there's an order. Next, think about all the poetry performances you've watched. You all commented on how clear it was that the poet cared deeply about the topic. So I'm going to add this. This really, I think, is going to help me with this. So I need to make sure that I'm focusing on emotions and I'm focusing on a feeling of a beginning, middle, and end to my poem. It's not just a jumble of thoughts. That's my hope. So what I actually did is I went through and I made some changes based off these 2 sort of next steps that I identified. So here is my second draft. And you'll notice what I did is I put those 2 jobs I had up at the top. That way we don't have to go back and forth. But this is what I came up with those 2 ideas in mind. And you can see this looks a lot different than my first poem. And I'm not going to read it all out to you, but I am going to walk you through some of the intentional moves I made. So first off, my focus was on emotion. And I decided to start right away with hitting my reader with the emotion. So my first stanza says, I cry even thinking about it. A wave builds and builds in my stomach. Sometimes it is so overwhelming, it takes my breath away. So right off the bat, I am conveying emotion. And then a second move I made having to do with emotion is I actually chose to do some repetition. I repeated this idea of worrying. I worry throughout the poem. I worry thinking about them. I worry that Shay will never learn to take risks. I worry my daughter Rice will never learn to be gentle. And I keep going with that repetition. I worry about them. And my thought was that kind of having that repetition of worry throughout would remind the reader that that is what this is all about. My poem is all about the worry of a parent for the future of their child. And then the beginning, middle, and end piece, what I sort of am trying to do, and I don't know that I'm completely successful yet, but I tried to have some sense of an order. So I started out with them, talking about the worries I have about my kids as like a whole. And then I focused in on the worries I have for my son, the worries I have for my daughter. I then went back to them again. And then I kind of kept that same flow. My son, my daughter, back to them. So those are sort of, I'd say, 2 intentional moves for emotion and then 1 intentional sort of move or focus I had for creating a beginning, middle, and end. So this is what you're going to do with your poem. I would have open the message checklist, your first draft, and start going through and seeing how you did with conveying your message and making any changes you need to make it clearer. All right, go get them.